Hi guys. I hope you're all doing well. Uh, Thank you for being here. Or if you're watching this in the future, thank you for watching. I have a very special guest today. I met him at a writing session in LA, and I was just really inspired by his stories and his wisdom. And so I'm really happy to introduce you to him. So here's Krunk. Hello.
Hi everybody, what's up, Baker? How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Good, good, good. I'm on a high, just like you. Again, I want to give you a big shout out for yesterday and how well you did.
Aw, thank you. It was fun being on stage. There's nothing like being on stage.
It's that rush, right?
Yeah, it's like the best high, but I don't know if it's like just me, but it literally doesn't matter like how big it is. There's always like a come down from it, like kind of like a a sadness that follows like a performance or a release or something like that.
100%. They say typically that when you finish a performance, it's like, um, I think it's like the what do you call it? Not the endorphins, but it's like the dopamine rush. Like it's like the dopamine like kind of retracts back, and then that's where you kind of get the like post show blues, like depression.
Yeah.
Everybody I know goes through it.
Well, I'm glad I'm not alone.
And you're not alone for sure.
Okay, so first I'm going to ask you so like everyone can get to know you. Um, this part of the interview is called Off the Cuff. And I'm going to ask you questions and like I have to set my timer for 1 minute and 30 seconds. And you can just answer as quickly and as many as possible. Um,
Dope. Let me get my mind right.
okay. Ready,
Let's
set,
go.
go. What is the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning?
Say thank you.
That's beautiful. Okay, how do you like your coffee?
Black
Your
with
favorite
butter,
with butter?
with ghee in it. Yep,
Okay, we'll talk about that later.
for
your
sure. Yeah.
your favorite thing to do when you're alone?
Um. Read.
Do you think with your head more or your heart more?
I'm a Pisces, so I'm gonna go with my heart.
Okay. City person or nature person?
Both.
Introvert or extrovert?
Both.
Your love language.
Um. Touch.
A place you want to vacation that you've never been.
Monte Carlo.
Your favorite food to order in.
Sushi.
And your ideal day off.
I would just be chilling with my loved ones, and usually that would require a little bit of time to myself.
Okay. An experience that you'll never forget. Oh fuck. Okay. It's done, but still answer it.
um, Seeing that I got a number one record,
What record was it?
Temperature, Sean Paul.
It's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Um, yeah, so that was it. I feel like it's like a good. I feel like I know you better now. So
Oh yeah, we did. It's a tip of the iceberg.
yeah. um, yeah. So first of all, how are you doing today? Post pandemic life, like obviously. I mean, I feel like I'm literally living in a completely different world. Do you feel
Yeah,
like the pandemic was overall, and you feel like better, like you're a better person because of it?
yeah, absolutely. I think that typically, and I think I was pretty well prepared going into the pandemic because I've been on my own journey in terms of like I've always been the type of person to take time to myself. Um, I have a lot of things going on, but I usually try to make it a practice of sorts that there's a time of the day where I specifically dedicate to me. And so most people who really know me know that you can't even reach me at like until like 10 a.m. because like if I get up early, I'm up by like 5:36, and that time is just dedicated to doing the things that I want to do, drinking my coffee with ghee, and just vibing, reading, sitting still. I meditate a lot. Yeah, so yeah,
Yeah, I think a lot of like COVID kind of forced a lot of people to develop some sort of routine to do when they were alone. And
for
then
sure.
now I feel like for me at least coming out of COVID, like I just get bothered by people more easily. Like I have less patience for people
100%.
because I know I do need people. Everyone needs people, but I feel like you don't need the same attention and validation that you did before COVID because you just had to learn to live without it. So now it's like all of this stuff that's unnecessary.
Hmm.
I just don't have the patience for it anymore, you
I
know?
have a phrase. I have a phrase where I always say like, I love humans, but I don't like people. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? I love the human race. I love what they have to offer. But then, people, I say human from a standpoint of being a human is a connection, is an understanding that we're all connected, and there's a selflessness with that. I think that when you recognize yourself as an individual person, that's where the selfishness kicks in. So like I try to differentiate myself, and we're all included. We all have those things. I try to focus my energy the best way that I can in terms of how I show up in that space. And so now with the pandemic coming out of the pandemic, um, I just feel like, it's important that we learn the best way we can to maintain the gifts that we got during the pandemic, and that's the ability to sit still, you know.
Yeah, no, that's really true. It's been a struggle for me, so I definitely need that reminder. um, I feel like like you always have such great advice and you're so wise. And I'm just wondering like how you got there. I know you grew up in New York.
Hmm.
What was your childhood like? What kind of music did you listen to?
Oh
Grow-
man, we're gonna go down the rabbit hole. So, I considered my life to be a very, very fortunate one in many ways. Um, Born and raised in New York, Brooklyn originally, Crown Heights, Ebbetsfield, then over to Flatbush. And then when I was about about 6 or 7, my parents moved me out to Long Island. So when we moved to Long Island, it was an interesting experience for me because it was the first time that I was able to experience other cultures and I did in Brooklyn because I went to a magnet school, and the magnet school had, I was probably the only black kid I was the only black kid in my class. So it was my exposure to being around other races on a regular basis. But when I moved to Long Island, it changed everything because I saw everyone. And what I was, it was middle class, coming from all different types, living in the same neighborhood. So as a result of that, my family's from Haiti. So I'm first generation Haitian American, and my parents were strict when it came to like music and what they, was education first, and that was where they had me focus my energy. Um, but music was something that called out to and from me from the time I was a kid. And then what ended up happening was my parents were so strict because that was right around the explosion of hip hop and rap coming to the forefront, and that was just something that for them they didn't understand. It was a shift of the culture, and it was associated with the inner streets, and that was the thing that my parents were trying to keep me away from, and thus moving me to Long Island. And what they didn't anticipate was that there were tons of kids like me who were coming from the same background, who were pushing forward with the same thing, similar family backgrounds, and just the beauty of being sitting in the suburbs. It kind of changed our perception of like how we viewed hip hop because we had our own take on it. So I was really, really lucky, excuse me, because I grew up in a time where there were amazing acts and amazing people that I would see on a regular basis, like as people, as friends, as peers and associates. And that was life changing for me. I consider it, if you're familiar with Malcolm Gladwell, I consider it an outliers moment where I literally grew up with some of the most influential people in the music business today, still. And it was something that it absolutely formed how I saw, who I wanted to become, at a certain point. And where musically I came from, my parents didn't really want me to listen to rap, like I told you. So I spent a lot of time listening to top 40. And so that top 40 and just listening and connecting and understanding how top 40, the things that I loved about it that made me happy and that I connected to, I would connect to that. And then I would go and sneak and listen to rap music and then connect to that. And so I felt like I got this really cool, mixture of cultures that allowed me to realize like certain things made sense. And from both sides, there were similar things that had common denominators that I felt like I could utilize for my own enjoyment at first, and then it became very useful for me as I became an adult and I entered into the business.
Cool. There, are there any like people that would know that you grew up with? Like,
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. So I went to middle school with Busta Rhymes.
oh, wow,
Um,
that's crazy.
yeah, he's actually the one that really made me realize that I could like do this. I would watch him. He was 2 years older than me, and I remember very, very distinctly that he would get a talent show, and I was in the seventh grade at the time, and he cursed on stage and ended up the show ended up being canceled after that. They stopped it, but I looked and I was like, wait, there are guys that look just like me that are standing up here in Long Island doing this, and this is a thing. And so you know, I I connected to that, and I was like, that's something that I felt like I wanted to do. Then a couple of years later, um, you know, him and a couple of other guys from my neighborhood formed a group called Leaders of the New School, and Leaders of the New School went on to have pretty moderate success, but it was the thing that pushed Busta into superstardom. And so I saw the moment where I was like, oh, I could really do this was that and I'm showing my age, as if the gray hairs don't enough, but I would remember as a kid in like high school, early high school, sitting down watching a show called In Living Color. And I remember that they came out on stage and were performing a song called Case of the PTA. And that was a song that, was near and dear to me because there were teachers that they actually mentioned. They were talking about school and how they hated school and whatever was attached to that. And there was teachers that I sat and, they were my teachers. And it was the first time that I recognized, I was like, it was the connection between being like living in this like human world and then oh my god, people are going and stepping into superstardom. So when I saw them perform on In Living Color, I was like, that's it, that's what I'm going to do. And so but there were many other people, members of they call them the Native Tongues tribe, so it was a tribe called Quest. If you went down the road probably 20-30 minutes, it was De La Soul. um, a lot of people, very important people in well, a guy that they call, well, he's passed on now, but he's had a huge resurgence in the culture, and it goes by the name MF Doom. He used to be part of a group called KMD from Long Beach. Then there are the guys who like formed like Biz Markie, um, Eric B. and Rakim, just architects of the music business, and they were the ones that when I was coming up that made me, and oh, I should forget Public Enemy. There were so many people, there were so many massive groups that were around us that we were growing up that we would see literally every day. Like you'd be driving down the block and you'd see Chuck D and you'd see Flavor Flav and you'd see, and I just realized that was real for me. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. I feel like it's funny because I on social media you see artists all the time, and it's not the
Hmm.
same like I try not to compare myself, but
Hmm.
it's not inspiring to me. Like to watch a bunch of other people, but when you're actually in the room with other artists and like around other artists, and it really like you don't get that same kind of like, oh, they're so good, like
Hmm.
I don't know if I could do it, or they have so many likes, like you just feel this like, oh, I want to be there. Like I want to do what they're doing. Like it's just this natural kind of gravitation towards it?
100%. Like when you see somebody, and that was the difference back then, when I was growing up as opposed to like now, again, you have so much access to celebrities through social media, right? But the thing that was incredible, like it was literally like, you found a pot of gold if you came across a celebrity, if you saw somebody. I remember even as an adult, seeing Prince for the first time and being floored. And I would spend a lot of time when I was in my early years, probably from 13 on. I would spend a lot of time going to all of these places where I felt like I would see all of these really cool people. So I would spend a lot of time in the Village in Washington Square Park. I would spend a lot of time in Brooklyn, downtown Brooklyn. I would spend a lot of time in Jamaica, Queens, and I would just see all of these. I would see people like LL Cool J, and I was just like, I can see them and I can touch them, and that's real for me. And so it's just this thing that kind of ignites a fire in you and lets you know that like this is real. If that person can do it, you can too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really true. So what would you consider yourself? Because like from what I know, you're a producer, right? Like
Hmm.
writer, producer. So is that mainly did you ever do an artist project, or did you mainly stick to like writing and producing?
I'm glad you asked that. So I started um, as a vocalist, and I went to school. I went to college actually in Long Island, a place called Five Towns, and I studied jazz and commercial music there. I initially I wanted to be an artist, and so what happened with me at that time was I had a family member who ended up becoming my mentor. He was only 2 years older than me at the time, so we were really close in age. And by the time I'd started college, he opened the door for me to come in and just be a fly on the wall and learn. And for me, he was just on his trajectory up at the time, and just by sitting down and watching what artists would have to go through on a day-to-day basis was something for me that I was like, oh, I don't want this, because I like, you have to be built a certain way to know. I think to be an artist, um, you have to contain both aspects of being selfish and selfless. You give so much of yourself on a day-to-day basis, and we would watch artists who were um, across the spectrum, starting or high, that's just like, or famous, and just recognizing how much of them they had to give. And I was like, oh, that's not something that I'm willing to do. And he recognized in me very early that I had an ability to put things together, and I had an organization process that allowed me to, you know, operate in a very organized fashion. And so that organized fashion gave me the opportunity to, you know, enter into the world of production, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really interesting that like you recognize that, because I feel like everyone wants to be an artist these days, but
Right, right.
um it's not like it is like you said, it's takes a certain thing. And I think something that's really important is for an artist is to just make sure like you are constantly filling up your own cup. And I'm not like
Hmm.
filling up your own cup with likes and validation and being the coolest person in your group of friends, but like really like
Right.
doing things and finding things that make you feel like you as a person,
Right.
like, and define yourself as a human being besides just being an artist. Because
Hmm.
if you don't, you're just going to become selfish because first of all, you're giving so much of yourself to other people, music,
Right.
your time, your energy, your love. And then second of all, you're constantly being told what to do by other people. So
Right.
like it's like that those things combined can really like make you develop an ego because you feel so out of control. And so like
Absolutely.
it's so important for any artist to just have things that they feel in control of, whether it be like
Hmm.
a mental, like a workout or a health practice, or just like people in their lives that just value them as human beings. Like I know for me, because like your ego as an artist is going to be like up and down. So
Right.
you need like that. It can affect your worth as a human being.
100%. 100%. It's a thing, it's you're 100% right. It's a very delicate balance, right? Because again, like you said, people are asking so much of you on a regular basis, right? Um, and being able to cheat a little bit of that for yourself. And it's so sad that you even have to say cheat, right? But just grab a little bit of that for yourself just to be able to maintain some sort of sanctity, and some sanity. Because again, I know artists all the time, and I see them like even people I'm friends with on my timeline. I'll see them post stuff, and they'll say, "Haven't eaten today, but I've done this, that, and this," and I'm just like, how is that even a healthy thing? And what is it that we're willing to sacrifice in order to have this thing called like quote unquote fame, or the responsibility to to be able to express yourself musically and connect with that many people? Is that the cost of it? Is it that you have to, you know, give whatever little time that you have for yourself, or any time, are you permitted to have any time for yourself? So it's something that I feel like is starting to change a lot more. I think that now delving into the realm of mental health and understanding the importance of being able to come from a place of having a full cup. It's something that's really now starting to set a precedent, in terms of artistry, in the music business today.
Yeah. And I think it's, we still live in a culture that really values hard work and like productivity over happiness and well-being. And
Right.
it's hard because as an artist, there's just, so much to do. You can never stop
Hmm.
working because you do
Right.
social media, and then you do answer emails, and then you call your team, and then you're looking at photo shoots, and then, oh, should I just write from 12 a.m. to 2 to 3 a.m. and then go to sleep because I didn't get to write today? And like,
Right.
it's all about prioritizing and just, I think too, like finding what you're good at, finding what you're passionate about, and just like putting most of your energy on that,
Right.
instead of like trying to be good at everything, because you're not going to be better at something than somebody who loves it. Like
For
if
sure.
you're forcing yourself to do things you don't like it's just not going to be a waste of time, because the person who likes doing it is going to excel much faster than you are at it. You know what I mean?
Right. That's absolutely true. Like, they say, like, you get to the point where like you raise your strengths, and then, you like work on your weaknesses, right? Because the truth is you're never going to be as, like, some people may be gifted in a particular thing, and, that's not sometimes that's not where you should be placing your energy. You should be placing your energy in a way where you can, you can be proficient in it to a certain degree, but you shouldn't be doing all of, like, putting all of your energy into that space. I think that what's more important though, and key, is that, you take your time and your energy to focus on being a whole you, and then making the decisions where you want to go from there to be able to build on that.
Yeah. And something I know I've seen from you is just like you work with artists, like you worked with Lauren Spencer Smith, who's a huge artist now, and then you also work with like other artists that aren't as big and but you or
Mhm.
just starting out, but you give everyone that same love and like support and attention.
Right,
And that's not like that is so not true for everybody in the music industry. I mean, like not at all. I know
right,
so many people who will treat you completely differently, even based off just how you're presented to them, like,
right.
and or who you're with when you meet them. And
Hmm.
I'm just wondering, like, what inspires you to like help artists, start from the beginning and find themselves? Do you find that more fulfilling than getting in rooms with people who've already made it and than just saying that you could be in the room with that person?
That's a great question. So, you know, um, having gone through the spectrum of that, right, and understanding, I am more satiated on a regular basis by seeing someone who's young and hungry, and and curious, because I'm curious, and I always want to see what the world looks like to them, and what it is that they understand and don't understand, and what is it that, how can I contribute in that way, form, or fashion. So contributing could be sitting down and, saying, just having a talk with them, and by being able to have that talk with them, um, being able to, you know to kind of open themselves up to, to their emotions. And a lot of artists are tasked with the responsibility of being able to express their emotions in a way that the masses technically understand, right? The reality of the matter is that they're not always that proficient at it. They're very, very good at telling their story. The thing that I feel like I'm most intrigued by when I sit with new artists is to let them know that, their story is very unique, but also at the same time the same for a lot of people. That's how you have successful artists, because when that person could have their own individual experience, and they can tell the story in a way where someone's like, oh, I'm like that too. Like, I go through that too. And I have these things and I feel these things too. I think that, when, you have an artist that can do that, it's amazing. And I think the challenge that I love, and, the challenge for me is being able to sit down and watch an artist for the first time recognize that they're not just looking within themselves, but the way that they're expressing themselves is helping other people. They want to help other people, but it's just like, how do I tell that story to the world in a way where everyone else can connect? I want everyone to connect to me. And so when we sit down and have these conversations, or we play some chords and it connects the dots, and I can see their eyes light up, I can see their body posture change, and they're like, oh my God, somebody gets me. And that's what it is that we want more than anything, is for people to hear us and get us. You know, that's my drug.
Yeah, no, that's amazing because it is at the end of the day, I feel like what any of us wants more than anything is just to feel understood. And I think a lot of times, for artists, we grow up not feeling understood because we have a hard time expressing ourselves. Um,
Hmm.
I know for me personally, like it just like I always kind of felt like I was observing, not existing in a lot of situations, and I was just
Mm.
overthinking everything, and I didn't feel like I was part of, you know, my like the group. I was just like in another place in my head,
Sure.
and I think music then was like my way of connecting with people. When I
Hmm.
sang or when I was singing with someone else, like my dad, for example, was like, I just felt like this, oh, I belong somewhere, like I
Right.
finally feel like I belong somewhere. And I think that you want to make music that gives other people that same feeling of like, I belong somewhere. And it's not what the but the beautiful thing about it is like it's like you get the feeling of I don't belong somewhere when you realize like you don't have to belong anywhere. Like you just have to be, you know? And I think like what you're talking about with music and like even with rap music, what I love about it is it's just kind of this rebellion, you know, like against society, against the norm. And I think it's like that's what music kind of like just takes you out of normal life for a second and allows you to like redefine yourself based on like your own thoughts and your own perceptions and nobody else's. And yeah,
Mhm.
it's like a really beautiful thing.
I think that was beautifully said. I think that what you and I completely agree with everything that you're saying. I think that, great genre music, right? I feel like there's like an ecosystem, right? um, Societally, the way that we're set up, and specifically in the States, right? Like we're set up in a way where I feel like we kind of try to like stifle what our issues are. We stifle it within our family structures. We stifle it within, how we receive information. And I think that like genre music, whether it's rap, whether it's folk, whether it's whether it's rock, whatever it is, I think that it taps into a space that speaks for people who usually don't feel like they have a voice. And then when they speak in that way, and they speak so aggressively, right? And they speak so loudly that as it reverberates through the world, there are people who have kind of deaded themselves because they've kind of bought into the way that the regular structure is, who turn around and say, no, 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 I feel like that too. I'm pissed off when this happens. This makes me feel good when this happens. I cry when this happens. My family's like this, or I'm like that, right? And when they hear somebody who can connect with them in that way, usually once you get that genre music that's done really, really, when it's really raw, it shifts the cultures, right? And then the how that and then how it enters into the pop space is that will typically want something like, usually, right? It's it's too aggressive for the culture, right? Like in itself, right? And when it's that aggressive, it scares people who are spending their time trying to like not tap into that space. So they need something to kind of give them a medium. But I think the beauty and the genius of pop is like when a song breaks through in genre, it's usually just the energy in of itself is undeniable. And then when you have great writing with it, that's when it enters into the popular space. And then when you get into pop music, now you're starting to understand that pop music needs genres that are successful, needs genres to be successful in order to be able to, in order for pop to be successful. So, it's like this always evolving cycle in order to be able to, do things to like operate on a regular basis, you know?
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. Like I never thought about it like that, but it is really cool. And I think like pop music is definitely has its purpose and its
Mm-hmm.
place. And like when you can get a message and like as strong message like that would come from a rap song or a folk song and put it in a format in which everybody, the masses, can understand it and relate to it, like that is the goal, right? Like
Absolutely.
that's like absolutely insane. That's when you have like thousands of people crying in a stadium because it's just like that powerful.
Like,
Um,
right, when you look at someone like Taylor Swift and you see what she's been able to accomplish in the last 15 years, right? Um, why? It's because, well, first of all, she's a phenomenal writer. There's nothing you can take from that. She's a phenomenal writer, right? But then she represents a massive part of the culture. She represents the coming of age of a young woman, from a girl to a woman. And that's why she's been able to be successful for so long, is because the women who follow her are women who grew up with her. you know. And when you have that, and you have that proper representation, and she started in country, but when you have that proper representation, it's the analogy that I use, and a lot of times in my sessions, where I say it's like the equivalent, and I say this with all respect to people, right? It's the equivalent of teaching first graders calculus, right? Because if you can find a way to take something really difficult and sum it up in a way where it interests them with one sentence, what ends up happening as a result is now you pique their curiosity and they're willing to go down the rabbit hole with you, right? A little bit further. So now when you give them a little bit more music and you give them a couple of different spaces, and when you go a little bit left, now they're willing to say, okay, now I'm following you because I'm with you on that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for sure. I think that, I don't know, growing up, sometimes we feel like doing pop music is like selling out, or, like not being true to yourself. I've realized, like, I just don't think that's true at all. I don't think it's selling out. I think it's actually like being really brave, because it's like being brave enough to make something that isn't just about you, but like is about everybody and can appeal to like the most people as possible. So
I think that's the beauty of, like, when pop is done, like when pop's done and done the right way, it's like when you really put the time in and really take the time to to meticulously create it and present it in a way where it can reach those people. That's the genius of it, and that's why it's so important to the ecosystem, right? Because again, if you go historically, whether it's jazz, whether it's blues, whether it's rock, whether it's rap, typically speaking, it was music for the youth, right? It wasn't music for the elders, like for the older people, right? They would usually typically get insulted by, they would want to make sure that um, they could keep that away from their children, because they considered that to be music that was, dangerous, right? Anything that changes the thinking is dangerous,
yeah,
right? So when they were able to find ways, and so the antithesis of that would be like, let's say, record company executives saying we need to find a cleaner way to do this, but then the real artists were the ones who are like, no, what we can do is we can take this, we can still take this energy, and we could still effectively give it to people and affect change, um, and not have to compromise the artistry. And that's great pop music to me. And
yeah,
then we have tons of them out, and tons of artists who are doing that out today.
yeah. Are there any like what are I have two questions. My first question is, what is one of your favorite songs you've ever been a part of? And my second question is, what are you listening to right now?
Oh man, great questions. I would say my favorite song that I've been a part of. Oh, that's a really good question. Um, Well, I'll go with temperature. And the reason why I'll say that is because I came in at a very unique part of the record. But I felt like it started by a friend, and, they were trying to figure out how to make it a single. They didn't feel like it was ready. And so they asked, me to come in and help finish the record. And that was something that I felt like, just in my just being in the process of that, and knowing that, okay, this was my friend's. I kind of looked at it, to be honest with you, like this was my friend's opportunity, to really kind of take off as a producer. And when the opportunity was brought up, I kind of approached it with that energy, and I was able to successfully accomplish that. But then it was really cool to kind of like hear the record being played as much as it got played, and then like hear people who knew me say like, "Oh, that sounds like. Wait, are you on that record? Did you do something on that record? Because that sounds like you. That totally sounds like something you would do." So just being able to kind of like have my DNA in that space, for something that big. And and it was my first time, I think, as a record producer, that I recognized the importance of teamwork. And sometimes being a role player, you don't have to be the guy who you don't have to be. I love being 100%er. That's great when you can do that. But I understood the importance of my role and the gratitude that I got, not just from the success of it, but from the other parties involved, really makes me feel like whole, like today, and it was done in love. And what was the second question?
What are you listening to right now?
Okay, what I'm listening to right now. Um, Actually, I just started listening to the Willow Smith album, and I'm really impressed. I'm impressed with the melodies. I was very, very. I feel bad saying this, but I didn't expect the musicianship from her to be as polished as it is, and so I'm really impressed with that. I've been listening to that. I've been listening to a lot of older stuff, to be honest with you. For me, I like creating my own playlists, and the people who know me well enough know, like, it's an act of love to create a playlist. It's an act of love to share a playlist, and that for me would be. Um, so I would say that I'm listening to. Oh, no, I know. I listen to the band Krunk a lot. They're a band out of Houston. They're phenomenal. Funk and soul band. I listen to a lot of Leon Bridges these days. Um, I will listen to. I'm listening to some Chelsea Cutler. I'm listening to Holly Humberstone. I'm listening to. I'm trying to think on the rap side who I'm listening to. I just started listening to the Lil Baby album the other day. Um, oh, I've been going to a lot of live shows recently, and so it's been really stoking some, like, deep rooted loves that I hadn't, stirred up in a while. So there's a band called Cortex I had the opportunity to go see, and they're like the most sampled French band in the history of hip hop. Um, and they have some. If you heard the samples, you would know immediately like who they were. And then another guy named a jazz guy, Milton Nascimento. I was able to catch his farewell tour about 2 weeks ago. So I'm listening to a lot of jazz. I'm listening to everything across the board. That's how I've always been. Like, I listen to the pop stuff, top 40 stuff. I'm listening to the rap stuff pretty heavy when I want that energy. Um, but then I'm listening to really chill stuff, a lot of R&B. I listen to a lot of dance hall, a lot of reggae. I mean, because that's my culture growing up. So, like, it's always been all the way across the board. But if I could think of some off the top of my head, that would be Coffee, the reggae artist. A lot of her too, and um, Oxlade, the been listening to Oxlade, the Afro beats artist. Always listening to Kid. Always listening to Burna Boy. Those are the ones that stay in my rotation.
That was a lot.
Yeah, a lot.
Music. No, but that's cool. Yeah. I feel like now with Spotify, like everyone listens to all different kinds of music because it's just available. So you don't have to like pick one anymore, which is cool. But
Yeah, it's a beautiful space to be. Like, when you can find so many and just create your own playlist. It's game changing.
yeah.
You're your own DJ.
Yeah. I have one more question that I ask everyone. And it's if you could go back and tell your younger self one thing, what would it be? Like give advice
Mm.
to your younger self. Yeah.
none of this means anything unless you're really happy with who you are. Like, you can accomplish all the things that you want to accomplish. Let me rephrase that. So success is not real success um, without a successful heart, um, without a successful body, successful mind. I know a lot of people who threw it all away just to have the success. They threw away their health. They threw away their ability to be surrounded by love, people who love them. Some threw their minds away, you know, and in order to achieve the thing. And I have this thing called like the space shuttle theory. And my when you're younger, right, you have this thing that motivates you to like where you turn around and say, well, I'm going to be this because this, that, and this. And that usually comes from like your childhood trauma, right? And it's like, it's your way of like kind of like sticking it to your childhood trauma, right?
Mhm.
And then you recognize that, you know, and you use all this energy, right? So if you look at the space shuttle is like, you know, it's obviously the, you know, the spaceship, and it's got like these two rockets, and it's got this huge fuel tank, right? And when it takes off, it's like the rockets fall off to the side, and then, you know, as it goes further into the atmosphere, then the tank drops off, and then what's left is the last bit of rocket power that it's got in for the space shuttle to push itself into space. um, you learn very quickly that if you don't have the right fuel in you, and that would be us as the space shuttle, right? If you don't have the right fuel in you, you will find yourself crashing right back down to the earth. I've found and I've realized that you can't, unless your heart is in a good space, unless you have love, unless you have people around. It doesn't have to be love relationships, but it could be like surrounded by people who love you. If you have, if you're taking care of yourself, like we talked about earlier, if you take just a little bit of time to just like watch the things you put in your body, you know, and you know, I know a lot of people over the years who've abused themselves, not just forget just the drugs and stuff like that, but just the food and just the staying up late and whatever, and the drinking, whatever it is that you got to do to feel like you are entering into that creative space, right? And whatever you think would sustain you. And then your mind recognizing that, you know, and you know, I talk about this all the time, is that when you walk into any room, that you belong in the room. And there's just this overwhelming thing where we all have this sense of imposter syndrome, and like sometimes we're like, how did we get here? And they don't recognize that you belong here, and that with that responsibility comes recognizing that, you know, there's a bigger room usually for you to get into, and once you've done what you've got to do in this room, it's time for you to step into the next uncomfortable place, right? So I feel like I would tell myself, this thing that you are chasing, this thing that you chase, there's so much more to it than what it looks like. And it looks so much more beautiful when you're surrounded by the things that are important. When you take care of yourself, you take care of your mind, and you take care of the people that you love around you, and you honor that. So if you can do that, that would be that's success to me. I would honestly, um, I would take 50% of the success that I've attained if it meant that I cultivated those aspects more. Because I knew that if I cultivate those more, those things will lift me up even higher. The happiness that I feel would lift me up even higher. So,
Yeah, I think sometimes that road is a longer road, you know,
mm-hmm,
the taking care of yourself, the staying true to yourself, the it's, you know, sometimes it takes longer to get where you want to go, but I think that when you do get where you want to go, you'll feel like you belong there, you know,
mm-hmm, yeah,
because you took care of yourself and you did it the right way. So,
for sure. And sometimes that's the journey. And so, again, going back to artistry and proper artistry, like, right? if, you know, people being able to see you on that journey and kind of walk it with you is the thing that allows people to keep coming back and saying, I want to see how this person is going to express themselves now. You know what I'm saying? Because if you could come from a space where you've got the young energy and you're like, hey, I want to win, I want to win. And then you're like, you recognize, there's more to this than just saying I want to win. I just want to be happy. And, you know, people recognize, and if they can climb that with you, that's again, true artistry.
And it's never too late. Like, you never have to go with what you defined yourself in the past. Like, I think a lot of people get stuck because they define themselves a certain way, and then they feel like, oh, people liked me as this, so what if I change? Well, people still like me. And it's like, well, if people don't like you after you've changed, or they are liking the old version of you, then they're not really liking you anyway. So it's
That's
like, you
right.
might as well just show them who you are now, and find, if they don't like you anymore, find the people that do. So
100%.
yeah.
100%.
But thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you again when I'm back in LA. So
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for giving me the opportunity even to talk and, you know, tell a little bit about myself. And, you know, I'm just really grateful. I'm obviously grateful for you, and I'm obviously grateful that we have the connection that we do. So I'm looking forward for you coming back, and we need to sit down and we need to write.
yes, yes. Next time I'm in LA, we have to get in the room together.
For sure. Let's get it. I'm with
Yes.
it.
Have a good night. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.